Hello and welcome to another round of MTGA Tasting Notes. Today we are getting into our 2022 Napa Valley Cabernet Sauvignon, the third iteration of this wine, a new wine still in our lineup as we've been continuing to evolve our Cabernet program under our MTGA label. This is a wine that has just only kind of gained more popularity steadily over the last few years for us. Some of you have been more familiar with our Saint Viateur, maybe our Grand Cask Cabernet Sauvignons. And this has been something that has kind of been that sleeper, I like to say. This is a Cabernet that I really make, in kind of a Merlot style, something that's meant to be a little softer, a little bit more restrained, something that's going to just be yummy when it's all said and done, kind of a Swiss Army knife style of wine, that whatever you need a good glass of red wine for, this is something that will certainly fill that void. Now, over the last few years, this is a wine that typically takes a little bit of blending to dial in. So the overwhelming majority of it is Cabernet Sauvignon. We're talking 90+%. And every once in a while, we'll use a little bit of Merlot, maybe some Cabernet Franc, just to kind of polish it a little bit, add a little extra structure, maybe a little extra plushness, and just dial in some of the details. In this particular vintage for 2022, there's about 2.5% Cabernet Franc that we added to it. It was just needed a little bit more structure coming out of a really hot, really ripe year. The fruit was really, really yummy, but very, very fruit driven. And the beautiful thing about the Cabernet Franc that we've been sourcing over the last few years coming from Carneros is that it has a little bit more structure, a little bit more kind of grit to it, and allows for a little bit more backbone in a wine when you use it as a blending component. So it's not a lot, just a little bit over 2%, and that's just enough to kind of dial it in exactly where we want it to be. Now, the other side of that is that we didn't want to use too much. I didn't want the structure to be too over the top. I still wanted this to have that great kind of sexy vibe about it and just be a crushable bottle of Cabernet when it's all said and done. And this is, I would say, if you've had the 2021 release recently, the prior vintage, that has a little bit more of like a brightness to it. And this is kind of what we would expect from a warmer, kind of riper year, that there's kind of these darker, kind of more brooding characteristics. And the fruit characteristics tend to go a little bit more towards your dark fruits rather than like, let's say, your bright red fruits. So kind of on the spectrum of flavor. 2022 is going to lean a little darker and like a little bit more intense. And that's exactly where this wine sits. But even though it's more intense, it doesn't like smack you upside the taste buds. It's not that go big or go home kind of wine. There's still this very nice even keel across your palate. And it doesn't kind of hit you really hard one direction or the other. It's just a great balance across the entire wine. And it's actually kind of one of my favorite descriptors of wine that one of our barrel suppliers used years ago, is that this wine has great like tension to it. Almost think of it like a flabby wine if you're kind of trying to walk on a tightrope and it's just super loose and kind of flapping all over the place. Kind of tough to do. There's not enough tension to kind of get the job done, basically, right? It's kind of going all over the place. When you have enough tension in a wine, there's basically it carries through all of your taste buds, right? It kind of hits you evenly across your entire palate without like being all over the place. And that's something that we really do try and achieve in all of our wines, but particularly our Cabernet. We don't want it to be too juicy and silky. We don't want the tannins to be too huge and in your face. We don't want it to be too green or intense and that side of things if you're to harvest really, really early. And we don't want the barrel characteristics to be like super woody and aggressive. So we want all these things to really come and meld together and create this nice tension in the wine where it's complete and taut and it really extends across your entire palate. It was a really unique way that this gal described this barrel program and how they create their barrels with that thought in mind. Something that really lends itself to kind of my style of winemaking, in particular when we talk about Cabernet, but it certainly bleeds over into a lot of our other wines. It certainly has from this very ripe vintage due to a big heat wave during the harvest season. It definitely leans a little juicier, definitely tends to have a little bit more of those darker fruit characteristics versus some more red fruit characteristics, but very in line with what you would expect from our Cabernets in the past. Very much like a new chapter in the same book is the analogy that I always use, is that we don't want our wines to be the exact same every year, because that's like reading the same chapter over and over and over again. What we want from a new vintage is the next chapter. We want there to be some subtle differences. We want to continue the story, if you will, and provide something unique and interesting for you to enjoy. And this 2022 Cabernet does just that. It's a wine we're, of course, very excited to share with you. It's been 3 years in the works, 2 years in barrel, a whole nother year in bottle before we finally get it out in the world and it's finally ready to go. So hope you have a chance to enjoy it, whether it's here out at the winery or when we're on the road over the next few months for any series of events. We're going to be traveling all over the country, sharing our wares as best we can. Have wine, will travel is the mantra that we have. So be sure to stay tuned for more of those details. You can follow us on our social networks at MTGA Wines on Instagram, here on YouTube, the Book of Face, also the social network formerly known as Twitter. You can also check out our website, mtgawines.com, and even our podcast, the Wind Up Podcast. There will be a link to that in the description of this video as well, so you can tune in and chat with us about all things wine, hospitality, the industry, all kinds of good stuff. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a great rest of your day, week, month, whatever the case may be, and we will see you next time here for some MTGA tasting notes. Cheers.